ENFJs 12 Rules for Life. These rules are a combination of advice that I'd give to ENFJs, but also things you can learn from them, i.e., rules that ENFJs would benefit from and advocate. So it's a mixture of both. Number 1. Sometimes you have to stop completely to move forward. ENFJs drive themselves hard, too hard often. They're typically high-energy people, but more than that though, they have introverted sensing as their blind spot function. The balance and self-regulation, that homeostasis that SI offers, can often be lacking in their life. Think of an athlete. What good is compelling yourself forward too hard if it will result in an injury that puts you out of action for long periods of time? Number 2. Remember your strengths, even when they feel like weaknesses. ENFJs have FE as their dominant function. It permeates their life. It is difficult, though, to have FE as your main strength. The moment you become disagreeable, the moment you speak up, the moment you give someone your blunt thoughts and feelings and simply tell it how it is, it will feel like you're undoing all of your good FE work. Because of this, ENFJs will try to bite their tongue even more, which can lead to resentment. Suddenly, your strength, your ability to bend to other people, to understand their psychology and adjust your approach based on that, to be diplomatic in a way that is deeply effective, feels like a weakness, like something that is happening to your detriment. That feeling is completely natural and understandable, but I would advise ENFJs to always recognize the power they have because of this skill. In life, we all make the mistake of overreacting. If one approach feels like it isn't working for us, we jump to the complete opposite one. We overcorrect. For ENFJs, FE is always a strength. And yes, it should sometimes be tempered by direct and blunt speaking, but should never be abandoned in favor of it. Number 3. You don't have to say it, but you should definitely know it. This is somewhat related to the last point, so I'll make it brief. Having dominant FE, and therefore inferior TI, means that you won't batter people with the TI hammer. However, make sure you have that hammer regardless. Just because you're not saying it or flaunting it, don't neglect knowing it. Knowing your stuff, knowing your opinions on things, knowing your logic and reasoning for the views you hold. After all, if you know more than you are letting on, you have a lot of power. Number 4. Embrace ISTP mode sometimes. One salient trait or tendency of the ISTP type is a drive towards mastery. As you might imagine, this necessitates lots of alone time, and even isolation. Periods where you are mainly focusing on acquiring skills, honing your craft. Although collaborative relationships are great conduits to gaining skills, sometimes it's important to detach a bit and go into the tank or the cave and work on your personal stuff, as opposed to your interpersonal stuff. Number 5. Enforcing a boundary is supposed to feel bad. On the Love Who Discord server, I asked the ENFJs whether they had any advice for fellow ENFJs, or in some cases, younger ENFJs. The concept of boundaries came up as probably the most common thing. To maintain a boundary is to take action in the absence of feelings, or rather, to the ignorance of them. If, in such moments, it feels awful, uncomfortable, unpleasant, then good. That's a sign that it's working. If a boundary doesn't feel somewhat awkward or even painful to assert and enforce, then it's probably not much of a boundary at all. A lack of boundaries is a very fast path to a lack of respect. Number 6. Transactionality in relationships is not a bad thing. ENFJs are capable of creating a huge network of people. If that isn't a desire of theirs, then they can definitely create deep relationships with a smaller number of people. The question then becomes, what do you do with this skill? Simply having a good relationship with someone is definitely reward enough. That is true. But there's no need to stop there. If a person you know and are close to has a skill, maybe they could teach you. Maybe you could trade lessons. If someone has a contact that might be useful to you, same thing. I think that imbalance is something that can creep into ENFJ relationships. The imbalance is where they're giving more than they get, which is often actually how they like it, but there are times where it stings. Building a certain transactional element into your relationships can be good. Healthy even. The word transactional sounds kind of cold, mechanical, and too businesslike, but you can conceptualize it in many ways. Just think of it as being symbiotic or mutually beneficial. Number 7. Let people suffer the consequences of their actions. Essentially, use tough love. ENFJs have a protective impulse, generally, even more so, towards the people they care about. This can spill over, though, into being a full-blown savior complex at times. Knowing that you could help someone, that you can see exactly what issues are coming down the line towards them in life and can stop them, sometimes without that person even knowing that you're doing so, makes acting upon this ability very difficult to resist. I mean, it can feel unethical to do so, to not step in. There are 2 points I'd like to make about this. The first is the most simple one. Let people fall flat on their face. Letting people fail is often the best way to help them. It's more effective than telling someone something, no matter how persuasive you are. The second point is more complex. There are many joys to helping someone, but one of them is related to ego, to the fact that it's you helping them, more than the fact that they're simply being helped. So, it is important to analyze your own motivations honestly. For example, if the idea of someone else coming along and helping a person close to you in a way that you were intending to help, would that bother you? If so, that's a good trait to keep in check. Number 8. Always have a physical outlet. I think this one makes it into every video in this series, but for different reasons. ENFJs get relief from expressing their SE. It is also something that they can overindulge in, so it goes both ways. The most obvious way to express SE is to do something physical, i.e. an activity or exercise. It keeps you in the moment and therefore gets you out of your head and grounds you. Also, it's an instance in which you're focusing on yourself and giving to yourself in a direct way. So it's self-care, self-love, self-focus, and also beneficial, which leads me to my next point, which is number 9. Healthy habits are your best friend. Introverted sensing is a function associated with finding comfort in repetition and consistency. That is a powerful way to construct a life, i.e. on the back of habits. In fact, that might be the only reliable way to do so. ENFJs have SI as a blind spot function, so staying consistent, especially when it comes to activities of self-regulation, can be a challenge. Inspiration, passion, desire, intensity, force of will, and all that good stuff are not enough. Not only are they not enough, but they aren't even needed at all. I mean, it's much easier when you have them, but the essential element is habit, the routine, the consistency. It's the ability to still do something on autopilot, even when you couldn't care less about it, or aren't in the mood for it. So cultivate healthy habits at all costs. In a strange meta way, the more healthy habits you cultivate, the more of a habit you're making out of cultivating healthy habits. So you will probably get better at doing it over time. Number 10. Use the power of no. This is just a simple tactic. I've noticed that high FE users tend to use softeners in their language. They will take the edge off something to the point where it's diluted down and loses its punch. Learn to say no, and no alone. It really is a glorious word. Number 11. Trust your instincts. What is an instinct or an intuition? I have no idea, but it really does seem to be a thing. Our brain can recognize patterns without us even trying to. More than that, it can actually fully figure things out and give us insights without us even trying either. Some people are exceptional at this. ENFJs would definitely be in that category. In the INFJ version of this video, I included a point called trust but verify. Of course, that is always the best approach, but in this case, my point is more to validate that intuitive approach that ENFJs have. The difference with ENFJs compared to INFJs is that ENFJs are more grounded and able to take in new information more rapidly. Their intuition is less of an imbalance in that sense. Although they prefer NI, they're also great at both types of intuition. ENFJs, because they have TI as their inferior function, might be seen by other types, or even slightly roasted by other types, as being somehow illogical. That is wrong, of course. ENFJs should think of TI as the verification process, kind of like a quality control. Many things in their life will be figured out and known in this way for ENFJs. It's a strength, so trust it. Number 12. Cynics never win. This is both something ENFJs can teach others and something that is good for them to remember as well. Let me use a quote to illustrate this point. If we could read the secret history of our enemies, we should find in each man's life sorrow and suffering enough to disarm all hostility. Are there monsters out there in the world? Yeah, I think some people could warrant that term. But it's very rare, I would say. And even those monsters are themselves often the product of monstrous circumstances. What do we do with that? I don't know. But to become cynical in the face of all the wrongs that are done to us feels like the ultimate tragedy. It is my personal view that cynics never win. I mean, even if they did, they might not even recognize it as such. Given enough time, people will let you down. They will disappoint you. They might even, in small or big ways, betray you. That is, like all of life's guarantees, painful. But people are more than their mistakes and flaws. If you give them a chance, and give yourself a chance, to put things right after the painful moments, they will often surprise you. However, that is not quite my point. Regardless of how it turns out, the act of giving that second chance, of having faith in people, of being a person who chooses to do that, is the ultimate victory. My ultimate victory is getting ENFJs to first subscribe to the channel and then to join me on the Love Who Discord server, where I can pick your brains.